Remote Neural Monitoring or RNM works remotely utilizing satellites and cell phone towers to control the human brain of the targeted victim, then log the victim's thought to text. It's said to be used as a surveillance and an intelligence tool, although it violates just about every valued civil right and liberty we hold dear without warrant, or you would have been served as per legal process. Research studies have shown that the human brain thinks at a rate of about 5,000 bits per second and does not have the capacity to compete with supercomputers, which signals are distributed via satellites, implants, biotelemetry and DNA sequencing tuned to resonate frequencies targeting individuals or mass populations. The human brain has distinctive datasets that are called a bioelectric resonance system from transcribing DNA into ions, then datasets that are tuned to a unique frequency targeting that specific individual, or from general voice monitoring of a population to identify a specific individual's brain output or neural signature. Then this unique brain signature, once acquired, is transcoded from signature to ions to specific DNA resonance frequency for that targeted victim. RNM consists of a complicated systems of software infused with a multitude of emotional and behaviors modification tools and communication abilities utilizing V2K, VM, PM, BCI, HMI, RE, RV, PM, location and MK technologies directed at the targeted victim's nervous system in order to influence their emotional state, thoughts and actions in a desired way. RNM technologies have been developed over the past 60 years and is abused today to influence individuals and populations. Secret neuro-electromagnetic involuntary human experimentation is well known to be used by the CIA and DARPA, acknowledging declassified projects like Operation Paperclip, MK Ultra, Operation Guinea Pig, Project Bluebeam, COINTELPRO and modern-day Operations Ventriloquist. According to many scientists, within a few years it is expected that DNA sequencing and nanomicrochips will become commonly implanted into the human brain, which would make it inherently controllable by the RNM and RNN operators, RODS and ESA. With RNM, it is possible to read and control a person's emotions, vitals, thought processes and physical movements, along with the subconscious messaging and dream injections. At present, around the world, supercomputers are monitoring millions of people simultaneously with the speed of 20 billion bits per second, especially in countries like the USA, Japan, Israel and many European countries with impunity, thus far as the general public is clueless as to the nefarious and invasive nature for which these technologies are used without accountability, compliance and enforcement. This is exactly why we must all spread the word and hold the U.S. government accountable for depriving U.S. citizens our constitutional rights, forcing many citizens into mental health facilities and creating false flag events by coercing and manipulating them to act against their better nature. This is a national security issue and health crisis that has been ignored for too long. RNM has a set of certain programs functioning at different levels, like the Signals Intelligence System, which uses electromagnetic frequencies or EMF to stimulate the brain for RNM, and the Electronic Brain Link or EBL or neural signature. Both cause tissue and brain damage unbeknownst to the targeted victim, as electronic magnetic fields can be extremely detrimental to the human body as a whole. The EMF brain stimulation system has been designed as microwave radiation intelligence, which means it receives information inadvertently originated from electromagnetic waves. However, it is not related to radioactivity or nuclear detonations. The recording methods within the Signals Intelligence System investigate electrical activity in humans from a significant distance, such as satellites and cell phone towers. This computer-generated brain mapping can constantly monitor all electrical activities in the brain of the targeted individual, causing great mental, physical and emotional distress. The recording aid system decodes individual brain maps for analysis, study and monitoring purposes without consent of the targeted subject, and affecting millions of Americans in varying degrees across the United States. This would be deemed cruel and unusual punishment if U.S. investigative agencies like the FBI and intelligence agencies like the DIA, CIA, DNI and DARPA were honest with politicians and the judiciary branch about the invasive nature and extreme consequences rendered to the targeted victim, including but not limited to synthetic telepathy and clairvoyance leading to misdiagnosed schizophrenia, delusions, brain damage and physical torture, not mention the injection of inhuman injections of ESA, ROD and operator auditory and visual torture 24 hours a day and 365 days a year, which could easily be deemed a weapon of mass destruction. For purposes of electronic evaluation, electrical activity in the speech center of the brain can be translated into the subject's verbal thoughts, also known as synthetic telepathy or acoustic paradigm. RNM can send encoded signals to the auditory cortex of the brain, directly bypassing the ear. This encoding detects audio communication and is recorded by the Fusion Center, U.S. Air Force Base comm centers, and inevitably the NSA. It can also perform electrical mapping of the brain's activity from the visual center of the brain, which it does by bypassing the eyes and optic nerves, thus projecting images from the subject's brain onto a neural viewing monitor and display at these communication centers. With this visual and audio memory, both can be visualized, analyzed, and recorded, which again violates just about every constitutional right we hold dear. This system is remote and said to be non-invasive, although in truth it is highly invasive and has yet to produce actionable intel to prevent terrorism. Instead, U.S. citizens are used like human cattle without a thought for their health or well-being. They are utilized as non-consensual investigative proxies, community stalkers, or molded into false flag domestic terrorists. This is believed to achieve the DOJ's philosophy and self-fulfilling prophecy of classifying domestic terrorism as being the number one threat to American citizens, which is far from true statistically. It's used to detect information by digitally decoding the evoked potentials in the range of 30 to 50 Hz and 5 milliwatts of electromagnetic emissions from the brain. The nerves produce a shifting electrical pattern with a shifting magnetic flux, which then puts out a constant amount of electromagnetic waves, which is again highly disruptive to any human being's normal life as they knew it before. There are spikes and patterns which are called evoked potentials in the electromagnetic emission from the brain and can also be used to hive mind the targeted victim with innumerable others they do not know. This is all carried out without any physical contact with the subject or the necessity of nanotechnology or an implant, as the human brain is a natural transceiver. The EMF emissions from the brain can be decoded into current thoughts, images, and sounds in the subject's brain and in reverse as well, meaning injected or manipulation of the targeted victim's overall actions even against their will through conditioning. It sends complicated codes and electromagnetic pulse signals to activate evoked potentials inside the brain, thus generating sounds and visual images in the neural circuits and vice versa to and from the viewing station or the others you are connected to without your consent or will. With its speech, auditory, and visual communication systems, RNM allows for a complete audiovisual brain-to-brain link or recurrent neural network with many other people, or a brain-to-computer link which is automated, or a combination of different RNN architectures which are generally modular in design. Of course, the mechanism needs to decode the resonance frequency of each specific targeted victim to modulate the insertion of information in that specific location of the brain to evoke the desired response or action. RNM can also detect hearing via electromagnetic microwaves or synthetic telepathy, which the targeted victim hears voices and sounds imperceivable to anyone else around them, and it also features the transmission of specific commands into the subconscious or subliminally to the targeted victim specifically or mass populations. This can produce visual disturbances, visual hallucinations, and the injection of words, numbers, sounds, and complete messages into the brain through electromagnetic radiation waves. Also, it manipulates emotions and thoughts and reads the targeted victim's thoughts remotely. Causes pain to any nerve of the body as desired by the ESA or rods, allows for remote manipulation of behavior, controls sleep patterns, dreams, and complete control over communication is made easy while the subject is unaware. This is said to be used for criminal investigations and security management, yet the broad constitutional violations bring the legal term of fruit from a poisonous tree to mind, as the targeted individual is controlled, manipulated, and under the influence of technologies very few in the world understand in full, and trained operators without oversight, accountability, or true enforcement can convince, coerce, and affect the behavior and thus the actions of the targeted victim. ESAs, rods, and operators are known to use shady and highly illegal tactics or manipulation, coercion, mental conditioning, and highly illegal interrogation tactics. Some of these tactics include convincing the victim their friends, family, and neighbors are at fault, that they are the one or competing in the hyper-theory game, that they have special powers, that they are part of a Dr. Frankenstein medical study, that they are under investigation and facing charges, that they are participating in terrorism investigations, that they are competing in FBI, CIA, or special forces tryouts, or in contact with government officials without physical contact, and many other scenarios. This yields false, coerced, and forced confessions under the threat of fear and distress without adhering constitutionally to the victim's right to remain silent. It denies the presence of counsel and the right to mount a fair and equitable defense if they were in fact truly facing charges. There are profound legal issues associated with RNM, moral concerns, and extreme humanitarian risks pointed out by human rights activists and other scientists. Many criticize the illegal use of RNM as a violation of basic human and constitutional rights, as it amounts to illegal search and seizure without presenting the victim with a warrant or presenting Miranda rights, and it's non-consensual as most victims are completely unaware of the source of their torment mentally, physically, and emotionally. It violates privacy, basic dignity of thoughts, and infringes upon every voluntary activity of the targeted victim's life. Several countries have protested against the involuntarily use of RNM and refer to it as an attack on every human decency. The scientists protesting against the use of RNM believe that people who have been afflicted involuntarily become biological robots, guinea pigs, Manchurian candidates, and electronic slaves for the RNM's ISAs, rods, and operators in the guise of national security for the United States government. Please note, this is not the American people, as they have been predatorized by these technologies for 50+ years with impunity. It is in fact the intelligence and investigative agencies operating under the false pretense of the Patriot Act, and does the latter. Instead of preventing terrorism and crime, it initiates, perpetuates, and incentivizes more terror and crime. Binding innocent civilians into electronic bondage, false imprisonment in their bodies, minds, and souls, and creates great instability throughout our nation as a whole. This is an important biological concern related to government-sponsored abduction of innocent minds, and is the equivalent of U.S. government-sponsored terrorism on its own citizen through and by dereliction of duties, willful neglect in the face of obvious evidence, and ultimately complicity in the greatest conspiracy in American history to use, abuse, and kill off innocent civilians by choice, not necessity. There is absolutely no doubt a majority of the population is ignorant to these hidden technologies that yield exactly one end goal: to take control of the human mind. RNM threats to civil rights such as free will, free thought, freedom of speech, free choice are near unfathomable, yet a clear and present danger to democracy as a whole, as it deprives each and every victim everything the former greatest country in the world offered its citizens. This is happening to hundreds of thousands of U.S. citizens today, and our government ideally sits back and watches victims die from slow kill voice of God neurological weapons, be tortured, tormented, suppressed, threatened, and utterly destroyed without interdiction. The U.S. government and every official, elected, unelected, or appointed in every agency and branch, must be held accountable for their actions and inactions, as they have failed to protect and serve its people. RNM is not only a controversial technology, it is a non-consensual weapon of mass destruction that should never be used on civilian populations. This is a war crime, and inevitably the world will see the U.S. government has defiled not only its own people but hundreds of millions of innocents around the world, and sent them all to an unjustified death before their natural time. This is an active genocide in progress by the U.S. government, as the technology leads back to only one source regardless of your personal experience, and the purposeful deception RNM ISAs, rods, and operators try to portray to individual victims. Please get the truth out and assist us in bringing this insanity to an end. This information was produced and provided by Cognitive Investigative Services, found at cistech.info, or reach us at 602-769-0036. God bless America. Please help us keep it that way.